Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of our full stack Vue.js Express Mongo series. In this video, we're going to start to deal with Vue because in the last one, we just created our backend Express API. You can see we have our server folder, we have our API folder with our PostJS file in it, okay, which was pretty simple. So now what we want to do is generate a Vue application inside of a folder called client. Okay, and this is going to be generated with the Vue CLI. So I'm actually going to leave my backend server running. As you can see, it's still running on port 5000. So I'm going to open up a new terminal while that runs, and we're going to install the Vue CLI globally. So npm install -g. It's going to be at vue/CLI. That will install the latest version of the CLI. All right, and the idea here is to have a client folder that will run the dev server that comes with Vue.js. Whoops, I have to do sudo because I'm on a Mac. But yeah, so we'll have a client folder that will have all the stuff that Vue CLI creates, our entire dev environment, and then when we're ready, we're gonna build all of our static assets out to the public folder in the server folder. So we'll have to add some extra config to be able to do that, and then that's what will get deployed. The actual client folder with all the dev stuff for Vue is not going to get deployed. In fact, we want to create a .getignore file that prevents that from even being committed. So let's do that before we do anything. I'm going to create a file in the root, okay, not in server, not anywhere else, just in the root, called .getignore, and we're going to put in here /client. Okay, client hasn't been created yet, but we're going to create it in a minute. And then also, of course, node modules. We don't want any of those folders to get pushed. So let's save that. And now let's generate the client folder using the Vue CLI. So we're simply going to say Vue create, and we're going to call it client. Okay, make sure that you're not in your server folder, you're in the root here. Let's run that. I'm just going to click the default here, Babel ESLint. And I'm using the version 3.0.4, as you can see. Yours may be a little later, depending on when you're watching this. And as you can see, it created a client folder inside of our structure here. Just ignore that. And I probably should have already created a Git repository and have been doing my commits and stuff, but I'll go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to say git init. Make sure you're in. If you're doing this with me, just make sure you're in your root. So we'll say git init or init. Let's say git add all and git commit, and I'll just say initial backend created. Probably should have did this a while ago, but that's fine. All right, so in our client folder, we have just our default Vue stuff. I actually want to run the front end dev server, so I'm going to go ahead and cd into client, and from here, let's run. What is it? npm run serve, I believe. Yeah, so that's going to start the Vue server. Okay, and that starts on port 8080 by default. So let's go ahead and open that up, and there we go. We have our default Vue application. We still have our backend running on port 5000. Okay, so backend 5000, front end is on 8080. So in our Vue.js application, I'm going to, let's see, we'll go into source. We have our components. They give you this hello world component by default. I'm actually going to change the name of the, I'm going to change this hello world component to post component. Did I spell that right? So post component.vue. That's going to break our application because if we go to app.vue, it's actually looking for hello world, and we need to change that. So up here, You can see they're giving the Vue logo. I'm just going to leave that. And then this hello world, which has a prop of message, we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to say post component instead. And of course, we need to bring that in. So post component, and that's going to come from component / post component.vue, and then we just want to change this reference down here to post component. We'll save, and now we should be back and up and running. Reload. There we go. All right, so before we deal with the actual post component, I want to create a service that handles making all of our requests. And to make our requests to our backend, I'm going to use Axios. So just for a second, I'm going to stop the server, and I'm going to make sure you're in your client folder, and then do npm install Axios. Unless you want to use the fetch API, that's absolutely fine. Or something else, super agent or something. But I prefer Axios. So I'm going to npm run serve again. And now inside our source folder in the client folder, we're going to create a file called posts. Should we call it posts? No, let's do post service.js. Okay. So this service, like I said, is going to handle all of our requests, and then we can reference this from our component. So let's first import Axios from Axios. Oops. All right, and then I'm going to create a variable called URL, and we're going to set up a proxy later on, but for now we're just going to put in HTTP localhost port 5000 /API/posts. All right, and then we're going to create our post service class. So class post service. We're going to have, let's say, get posts, create post, delete post. Okay. So for getting posts, I want to create a method called get posts, but we want to make this static. Okay, and what I mean by static is it means that even though we have a class here and we have a method, we don't have to instantiate like a post object to be able to use this. We don't have to say new post service or whatever. We can simply call postservice.getPosts, and that will run it. Okay, so it's very important that we use static here. And then the way I'm going to structure this is I want to return a promise with the information that we get from the back end with the posts, and also an error if there's an error, and we'll use a try catch block for that. So let's say return new promise, and there's a million different ways you can do this stuff, but we're going to say async and promise. Promises take in two things. They take in resolve and reject. Okay, so basically when the promise is done, like when we do what we want it to do, when we're finished, we want to call resolve. If there's some kind of error, we want to call reject. So from here, let's use an arrow function. And from here, we want to do a try catch block. Okay, that will take in a possible error. So what we want to try is to make our request to get the posts. So let's say const res, and I'm using async await. Okay, we labeled this as async right here. So let's say await, and then axios.get. We're going to make a get request to the URL, which is the API/posts. Okay, then that should give us data back. So we'll have a variable called data, and we'll set it to res.data. Okay, and then I just want to call resolve here. Okay, if what we do is successful, we want to call resolve, and inside this resolve, we're just going to map through the data that we get. We're going to say data.map, and map it's a high order function that will basically loop through a set of data or whatever it is, and you can return another array from it. So I'm going to pass in post. You can call that anything, but we're just going to say post. And then in here, we're going to use the spread operator, and basically that will take whatever is in the current post, and then we just want to say created at and set that to new date and pass in whatever the created at date is, so post.created at. All right, so that will resolve our data and that will return all of our posts. Now if there's an error, then we want to call reject. That's how promises work. Okay, so if there's something goes wrong, we call reject and pass an error. This would be what would be in the catch. Okay, if you don't use async await and you use then, dot catch, this was what would be in the catch. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Now these other methods are going to be much more simple because we're not actually returning data. We're just making the request, and we're getting either a 200 back or 201 or whatever. So let's say static, and we'll call this insert post, and it's just going to take in one parameter of text. Okay, and then in here we just want to return Axios. We're going to return directly axios.post and pass in the URL, and then we want the data, which is just text. Okay, and we could do text like that, but since they're the exact same with ES6, we can just do text, and that's it. Let me just put a semicolon there, and let's put one here. You don't need semicolons. In fact, in Vue, it's popular not to use them, but I prefer to use them. So delete post, very simple. We're going to say static delete post, and that's actually going to take in an ID because we need to know which one to delete, right? So we're going to return Axios dot make a delete request. And remember, with this, we need to actually go to API/post/ and then the ID. So I'm going to take this URL and then put this ID directly after it. So I'm going to put in backticks. We'll use the variable syntax here for the URL, and directly after that, we want to use ID. Okay, we don't have to put a slash in between because if you look at oh, actually, I forgot to do that. We want to put a slash like that. Okay, that way we don't even have to add a slash here. And that's it. So we'll save that. And one thing I forgot to do is export this. So we want to export default post service. Okay, and we should be all set here. So let's close this up. Let's go to our post component. And this is obviously, this is the view that people will see. So I'm going to actually get rid of everything in the template. Let's get rid of all this in the template. We'll leave the template tags though, and then let's see, for the script, I guess we'll just leave that for now. And then the style, I actually have just a little bit of CSS that I'm going to paste in. I don't want to type it all out because it's pretty easy, and I don't want this to take too long. So I'm just going to replace all this styling with this, and I'm just going to go through. If you want to copy it from here, you can do that. If you want to go to the repository and copy it, you can do that as well. So we have the container, we have the error. Okay, we want red background for any errors. The posts will have the green background, some padding and so on. The created at, we're going to position it up in the top left. Also give it a darker green, and then the text has some style. So that's the basic styling for this. All right, so let's do the script tag first. So I'm going to actually just change this name to post component. It has no props, okay? Nothing's being passed in with the component tag. So we'll get rid of that. We are going to have some data though associated with this component. Okay, and if you're new to Vue, this is basically like if you have experience with React, it's like your state, your component state. Okay, but we want to make sure we return an object with this stuff in it. So we're going to have posts, which originally will be an empty array, and then what we want to do is make a request to our backend and fill that array. We're also going to have error, which is just going to be an empty string. to begin with, and then text is going to represent whatever is typed into the input to add a post. Okay, so that's the data associated with this component. Then what we want to do is go under data, we'll put a comma here, and we're going to use async created. Okay, so created is like a lifecycle method. It runs automatically when your component is created or when it's initialized. So here I'm going to use a try catch. Okay, so we'll do a try catch, and from here I want to set the posts. So if I say this.post, this pertains to this data right here, this array, and I want to fill this. Okay, when the component is created, I want to make a request to the backend through the post service that we just created. Okay, and remember that returns asynchronously, so we want to use await and then post service dot, and we want to call get posts. Okay, remember that. If we go in our post service, so we're reaching into post service, and we can use post service dot get post directly without instantiating anything because of this static. So that will try to make a request and get a response. Now one thing we need to do is bring in the post service, because right now it won't know what the hell we're talking about. So up at the top inside the script, let's say import post service from, we want to go up one level, // into post service. That's right? We want to go out of components and then into post service. Okay, so in the catch, we're just going to set this error to whatever this is. So this dot error equals whatever the error is. Okay, actually it has a, this is an object, it has a message value. So we want to do error.message. Okay, so I think that should be good. You know what, we have to do the create post and delete post and stuff like that, but I think for now I just want to get the posts and display them in the component. So let's go up to our template now, and let's do div class equals container. I'm going to do a little bit of styling here, but not too much. And I don't have Emmet set up with Vue, so I can't do like, div test tab. Oh, I can. Never mind. I thought I couldn't use it here. So let's do h1 and let's say latest posts. And here we're going to want to create, we're going to need the form to create a post, but I'm going to skip that for now. In fact, I'll say create post here. And underneath that, we're going to have an HR, and then let's have an area for the error. So this will have a class of error, and we only want this to display if there is an error. So we want to put a conditional in here. So we want to say vif equals error, and then pass in here whatever that error is. So we want to use our double curly brace syntax and just put in error. All right, and then underneath that, we want a container, a post container, and then we want to loop through each post. So we'll have a div with the class of post, but we want to put a bunch of attributes on here. So I'm going to go in here. We want to do a v-4. This is how we can loop through. v4 equals, and I'm going to say parentheses, we're going to use post for each one, and then index if we want the index for anything. So in posts. Okay, v4 post index in posts. What is this error? Require expect to have v. Oh, okay, we just haven't done the v binds yet. So after this, let's do our v-bind, and we're going to set item is going to be equal to post. Okay, so whatever we put right here is going to go here. And then under that, let's do v-bind bind, and let's set our key. Actually, let's do our index. So we'll do vbind :index to the index, and then we want our key, so v-bind key. And what I'm going to use for the key is the ID of the post, and we can get that with post._ID. Remember, MongoDB creates an _ID field. All right, so now in here we should be able to display our post text. So I'll put a paragraph with the class of text, and inside here we want double curly braces and just say post.text. Now above that, I want to format the created at, the date. So I basically want to get the day, the month, and the year and format it that way. So let's go ahead and put our expression in here. We're going to use backticks and use our variable syntax. So we want to say post dot created at dot get date. Okay, so that'll give us the day. And then after the curly brace, let's do a slash, and then we want the month. So I'm just going to copy what I just did here and paste that in, except instead of get date, we're going to do get month. Okay, and then after that, we'll do another slash and paste it in, and then we're going to do get full year. And these are just standard JavaScript methods. So get full year. And that should give us the format that we want. And I think that should do it. Let's save. And let's go. Oh, we got an error here. Let's see what's going on. Import Axios. In PostService, import Axios from Axios. Oh, we need quotes around this. All right, save that. Okay, let's go back to our app and reload. There we go. So we're getting the post from our API. So whatever we have here, hello world, and so on. If we went to Postman and added another post, it would show up here. But obviously we want to be able to do that through our application. So let's continue on and let's add that functionality. So let's go up in the template. Where are we? We want to go to post component, and in the template we want to replace this with our form. So I'm going to have a class of create-post, and let's put a label. We'll say label for create-post, and we'll just say something. And then underneath that, let's do an input. And this is going to have an ID of create-post. Okay. What else do we want to do here? We actually want to bind this. We want to bind this value, text, to this input. Okay. So to do that, we use vmodel, v-model. And we want to set that to text. Okay, so we're going to bind that. Let's also add a placeholder. So placeholder equals, and we'll just say create a post. All right, and then we want a button. So let's say button, and I'm going to add an event to this. So we'll say v-on, and then the event we want is a click event. So whenever we click this button, we want to call create post. Okay, and then we'll just say post for the text. So let's save that, and let's just make sure that it actually shows up. Okay, so here it is. What the heck happened to our data though? Wait a second. Okay, so I think it's just because we haven't added the create post function, so it's just it's messing up because of that. So once we do that, we should be fine. Yeah, so it's looking for a method called create post. So we want to go down here and go after the created lifecycle method. I'm going to put a comma here, and we want to define methods. Okay, so these are just like custom methods that we create. So one of them is going to be create post. We're going to say async create post, and let's await from the post service. Post service, and remember we created an insert post method. We want to pass in this dot text, okay, because this text value right here is bound to the input. So whatever is in that input we can access with this dot text. Okay, and then once we do that, once we insert the post, we simply want to say this dot post equals just like we did up here. We just want to get the post again. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste that in. Okay, so let's save that and let's go back. And we see our data. We don't see any errors. That's good. And let's say this is post 3. When I click this, it should fire off create post, and there it is. And if we go to our API and reload, that gets added. Awesome. So now we want to do the delete, and then the functionality should be done, and we can get ready to start adding the proxy and changing the build directory and stuff like that. So method, let's see, it's going to be pretty similar. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing, put a comma here, paste that in, change it to delete post, and we're going to use the post service instead of insert. We want delete. And we're going to pass in here ID, okay, and I realize we haven't created this up above yet, but we will. And then again, we just want to fetch the post. So let's go up above, and the idea is we want to be able to double click on a post and have it call that delete post function and also pass in the ID. So this is the div that represents each individual post. So I'm going to add on to this. I'm going to add an event handler, so v-on. The event is DBL click, okay, so you can use any native event, and we're going to set it to delete post and pass in post._ID. Okay, so that's how we can get the ID. Once that runs, it'll call the delete post that's in the service, interacts with the back end, makes the delete request, gets the response, and then reload the post. So let's save. Let's go back to our application. Let's reload. Let's double click. Let's see. Are we getting any errors here? Reference ID is not defined. Okay, so let's see what's going on. Oh, I didn't pass in ID right here. Okay, so up here it's where we're passing in post._ID. I wasn't handling it right here, so it didn't know what to do. So let's try it again. Hopefully that fixes it. So we'll reload and let's double click, and there we go. Okay, so now we can delete. So I think that's it, guys. In the next video, we're gonna just do a little preparation before we deploy to Heroku. We want to make it so that we need a proxy so that instead of our URL and our post service being localhost 5000, we can just do /API/posts. So we need to actually add a special config file for that. All right, so we're going to do that stuff in the next video.